Welcome. This is the first of the interview series that I'm holding with an absolute legend and life strategist, a man who I've developed a very great relationship with in a very short period of time, and a man who I'm very pleased to introduce you to is Stephen George, and he comes to us today. Uh, Addressing the topic of what's going on right now in life, what's going on right now in the global situation, and he's going to share his wisdom and his skills, and we're going to have a deep conversation around what do people need to know right now, and this is going to be a bit of a deep dive. So I'm excited to have you here on the show, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
No, my absolute pleasure. Thank you for asking me. I think it's a great opportunity to delve into a subject that's really kind of affecting a lot of people, and so I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So obviously we're going through a very challenging time right now. I mean, as of the day of this recording, it's the 25th of March, 2020, and we're right in the thick of a wave of uncertainty, of changes. You know, we've seen various countries around the world going to lockdown, places like Italy and Spain, and we've seen, the UK and now America. There's a lot of global economic uncertainty, social uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty in this world, which, as you and I know, in the space of working with clients, having very transformational coaches and helping people with mindset, there's nothing inherently wrong with uncertainty. It's part of life, but it's how we respond to it, and it's how we think about it and how we contextualize it that makes all the difference. So I guess I'd love to know your point of view in terms of what's actually going on right now in terms of the challenges that people are experiencing around this. What's your take on what's actually going on right now? Because there's a lot of people that are stressing out, a lot of people that are worrying, and there's a lot of concern out there. So what's your take on what's actually going on?
Yeah, I think we're experiencing not one but two pandemics. The first one is the virus itself. The second one is the fear of the virus, and the fear of the virus is what's causing this mass hysteria. While the virus itself is serious and can be dangerous, but it only affects a very small portion of global population. But the fear of the virus is affecting virtually everybody on the planet, and that's why we see people freaking out over toilet paper and pasta and what have you, because they've entered this realm of, as you said, complete uncertainty. They don't even know what's going to happen in the next hour, let alone next week or next month. And people are losing their jobs, losing their livelihoods. There are genuine concerns, but fear is a great motivator, but it's also a mind-altering drug. It can cause you to do things that you wouldn't normally do, and hence the toilet paper and the pasta and everything else. This is one of the greatest challenges we face today. It's not so much just the virus itself and the effects that has. It's the fear of it, the uncertainty, the unknown aspect of it, because we're going through a truly remarkable period in history. I don't think anybody alive has experienced anything like this. And so people looking for answers, and unfortunately, we are lacking true leaders. If we're looking at the media and politics and entertainment industry, they're all telling us that the world's about to end any second, and there's no true leadership out there. And when there's no leadership, there's people get to a level of hysteria because, as I said, they don't know what's coming next. So that's one of the aspects, is we need to look at, yes, the virus itself, but also the fear of the virus and what effects that is having on people.
Mm. I love that, Stephen. I think one of the biggest challenges people are going to have around that is distilling the difference between wisdom and fear, is actually knowing how does someone actually discern the information that's coming in and actually qualify that information to know, well, what do I pay attention to versus what's propaganda, what's hearsay, what are some ideas that are coming through. So what's your take on how people should actually approach this from actually a self-leadership point of view? What advice would you give someone, and how do you actually prepare yourself to be able to distill wisdom from fear?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And it's a great point that you make too, that we need to focus less on the external. The external are things that we cannot control. What happens with the virus, what happens with the economy, what happens with the political sphere, we can't control that. What we can control is how we respond to it. So you can either be in a state where you're reactive, or you can be in a state where you're adaptive. So reactive is essentially you're reacting purely on the fear that's coming through your screens, whatever it is, your TV, your phone, what have you. That's a reactive thing. That can cause a lot of, it can compound on the problem. But being adaptive simply means that you look at the situation objectively and you say, okay, these things are happening. I have no control over them. How can I adapt my life and the way that I live day to day that best suits the current situation? But understanding that this is not a forever thing. This has an end point. It will at some point end. We will go back to normal within months. I wouldn't even call it years. It's going to be months. And that's how you can distinguish between propaganda, kind of fear porn that we see everywhere, and what we can actually do, what the sensible, rational thing. Because if you're in a state of fear, rationality goes out the window, logic goes out the window. You're in survival mode, and when you're in survival mode, it's just chaos. And what we need to do is look at, see, in aviation, the pilots, if something goes wrong, they refer to it as inverting the logic. So they'll acknowledge what isn't working. If the engine goes out, they'll say, okay, the engine's gone out. But then they'll redirect their focus on what is working, all the other things that are working, and so they look at opportunities to adapt to the situation rather than focusing on, oh my God, the engine's just blown, we're all about to die. And so, that just causes more panic. The reality is we have a virus. That's the reality. We can't, and it's serious enough to cause a lot of harm to a lot of people. But focusing exclusively on that is just going to keep people in this state of survival, in this panic state where they can't think rationally. So what do we do? All right. So we look at the situation and say, this is the reality of it. This is the truth of it. We can't fix that. That will take time and a lot of effort by, specialists and what have you to look after. What can I do in this moment in time? I mean, people have lost their jobs, people have lost their livelihoods, people have lost their lives. These are all serious things, but compounding on those things by only focusing on those just makes things a lot worse, and it'll drag out the suffering even further. So what do? I've lost my job. I'm on 2 weeks quarantine. What do I do? Okay, let's just figure out a way to adapt to the situation. How can I improve myself? How can I focus on the things that I can do in terms of personal growth or business growth? And those two things aren't mutually exclusive, by the way. Personal growth does and can lead to really great business growth if that's what you're into. And that's the thing. If you look at the situation objectively and say, okay, that's not working. What are all the other things that are working? I've still got my health. I've still got my mind. I've still got access to the internet. I still have access to my network. I can start to adapt the way that I live and the way that I operate in a way that is not only appropriate for the current situation, but will leverage and allow you to position yourself in a much better place to take advantage of when the recovery happens, of when the taps start to flow, and business is booming again, and it will boom again. There's no question.
Mm. Yeah, I love that, Stephen. So there's two really important parts I see to that. There's the mindset of actually being present to the wisdom that's coming through in the moment, and actually doing whatever daily practices, whatever personal development disciplines that we have to remain present and calm. And then in addition to that, I love what you're saying there. It's being adaptive, which is the whole spirit of innovation, creativity, thinking outside the box. So it looks to me like in order for someone to access the innovation and creativity, they need a foundational level of emotional resilience or some sort of sense of calmness before someone can activate that. So maybe if we speak into what would you advise, or what would your recommendation be for someone to actually double down on creating a sense of calmness, resilience, and emotional control right now? What would you recommend in terms of any tools or daily practices or anything to help people get resilient right now and keep a clean head?
Yeah, I think this is a very important topic as well, point as well. With any situation in terms of whether it's stress, anxiety, depression, any kind of emotional dysfunction that's going on internally, there are always two different things at play. There are two different aspects at play. The first one is the symptomatic effects. And that you can address quite easily. There's a lot of information out there. That's the heart racing, the confusion, all the rest of it, the stress and the anxiety and all the rest of it. You can deep breathe, you can meditate, you can do a bit of exercise, you can eliminate things that are stimulants like coffee and alcohol and what have you. There are measures that you can take to address those things, but keeping in mind those measures are designed to get you out of that acute state. They're not really there to cure you or anything. There's no long-term effects of that. There's only periods of relief, which is great, because when you're in that state, and I've been in that state, it's not pleasant. So do whatever it is that you can do to get yourself out of that. Even, I mean, for me, exercise is great. So the gym's just closed down. I mean, that's my therapy. I'm like, what the hell do I do? So
Yeah, now what?
I've got a backyard. I've got things I can do. I've been training this week. The thing is, even if it's 5 minutes, one of the things that we do with one of our online programs is the day design program. Is we have a morning routine and then the end of day routine. The morning routine, I think, as you know, starts off with a 5-minute movement practice. So just move, just do something to get your body moving. And if it elevates the heart rate, even better, because in the morning is when your cortisol levels are at the highest. So if you can deal with your cortisol straight away, you'll set yourself up for a much better, much more calm, relaxed day, rather than living through that morning period of that high cortisol levels and adrenaline levels. And then of course, people have coffee and they have, sugary cereals and all the rest of it, which, just compounds the problem. So you can address the symptoms in that way. But the other one is the causal effects. The causal effects are essentially the idea that, okay, so why do people freak out when something bad happens? If they lose their job, or if they a relationship breaks down or what have you. It's not so much, the reality is it's not so much the end of the relationship or the losing of the job or whatever, what have you. It's the fear that who they thought they were in relationship to their job, their relationship, or what have you, is dead or is at threat. And so a part of their identity is invested in this particular thing. Like it could be a job that they've worked many years to cultivate, to create, if it's a business, what have you, they've invested not just their time and energy, but their own identity and their own self-worth into what it is that they seemingly lost. And so when you look at someone in the situation now, most of the time we're talking about financial effects. So it's business is slowed down, or the hours at my job aren't there, or I've lost my job completely. And so the identity is, I'm someone who can support myself through life financially, and I can support my family financially. Now that this is gone, that identity is in question. That idea of I can provide a life for myself and my family is gone. And so that's where the panic sets in. That's where the freak out is, because it's a sense of annihilation rather than a temporary situation, which is not preferable. Obviously, it's going to be painful, but the idea of this total identity annihilation, that's what's causing all these things. So once you address that particular aspect of, okay, this thing has happened, I didn't choose it to happen, I didn't cause it to happen, and the effects are that I'm going to be struggling financially, which means my family might be struggling financially, what have you. But I'm still here. I'm the me, the unborn and undying me is still here. That will not be affected by anything. And so the perspective is, yes, things are bad, but it doesn't reflect on me as in terms of my core values. I am still who I am. I will need to adapt. And how can I position myself, as we spoke before? How can I position myself so that I can be, that I can leverage this situation to my advantage and to help other people, more importantly, and then the financial rewards will come once everything settles down.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that you just raised, which is there's a temporary forgetting of the infiniteness of what we actually are. It's almost like in times like this, when the fear kicks in, there's an increased level of attachment or identification with a role or an idea. And so the enormity of what we are as pure consciousness kind of gets restricted and diminished, and we now think that we're less than what we are, or we think we're more vulnerable, and so we lose ourselves. We forget the enormity and the magnificence of what we truly are in that moment. So I can see how that happens for a lot of people when their whole entire sense of identity was caught up in, this is my job, and all of a sudden that job is now removed. Well, where does that leave someone if their whole entire identity has been built around this sense of self, this apparent self? So I can see that's going to be a major cause for a lot of stress for a lot of people right now, which is essentially an expectation about how they are treated or how they see themselves in the world. So I can see that identity or attachment to identifying with something here that's now being taken out from under them, that's essentially the source, that's the origin of the stress. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And the reason why it is so is because we've created this identity for ourselves through our own experiences and our own, personal environments as we grew up, which is largely false. If you talk to any, psychologist, psychiatrist, they'll tell you that most of your identity, what you believe to be true about yourself, in other words, is formed at a very young age. And then you spend the rest of your life looking for things to confirm those decisions that you made about yourself. So most people are walking around with this completely created false identity, but they're so invested in it because they've lost the ability to see that it is just a construct. And so when you have situations like this, and that identity knows it can be annihilated too, because it is so fragile, because it's man-made, it's just completely self-created. There's no real basis in reality to that identity, largely anyway. So anything that threatens that, anything that's even remotely interpreted as a threat, is really kind of, the response is really over the top because it needs to protect itself. Once we understand that, once we understand that the fear of the uncertainty, the fear of the situation, the negative emotional response that we're having to what's happening is not based on any real, genuine, authentic reality, rather than this false construct that we created for ourselves, we can then step out of that and have empathy and sympathy for that particular identity feeling threatened. I mean, we're getting a little bit deep here, but it's important to recognize that the you that you believe yourself to be is largely a construct, and it's afraid because any change in the status quo, anything that deviates out of the standard, is seen as a threat, and it needs to be dealt with harshly, really quickly. Whereas the you that is eternal understands that it cannot be destroyed, and it cannot be affected in any negative way. So that's the part of you that kind of sits back and watches this whole show unfold. And so the more we reconnect back to that, and the less we invest in this false constructed inferior self that we call us, the less things like this will have an impact on us, and the less negative emotional response to things that generally, if you look back at it, are meaningless, and they shouldn't really have the effect on you that they have,
Yeah, I love that. It is a deeper conversation. And I know that's one thing that you and I both go into a lot of depth with our clients, is helping.
It always goes, especially when we're talking. It always gets deep. That's why I bring my my underwater diving gear when we talk, because I know it's going to get deep.
It's great. It's great. And because that's one of the big things that we do with our clients, is helping them with the dissolution of the identity, the dissolution of realizing that false self, it's a construct, it's an idea that was birthed at some point. So, so that's probably a conversation that we'll go into a lot deeper at another point. And to pivot slightly, I'd love to know what your take is on, there's going to be some really practical steps here that a lot of people can take in terms of gaining perspective, in terms of realizing that this thing isn't going to last forever, that we're going to bounce back out of this. So there is going to be a lot of silver linings to this whole experience. There's going to be a lot of innovation. There's going to be a lot of great things that come out of this. This, people are calling it a crisis. Let's roll with that for now. If we're calling this a crisis, there is a silver lining to this crisis. So I'd love to hear your take on, what are some of the perspectives that people can really take, like practical perspectives that are really actually down to earth and grounded? They're going to help people get through this.
So this is the one thing that I tell people. I say, if you discovered a brand new planet and you were charged with designing a whole new system of living, would you design it the way we have things now? Most people say no, right? Because most things are crazy. Look at the financial system, the education system, the health system, the food. I mean, you look at any aspect of our lives that is externally based, that is system based. It's pure insanity. There's no way any sane person would sit down and design it this way, right? So my point is that we've all been complaining how bad things are. But in order for us to fix it, things need to break down first. So, if you've got an old house and you want to upgrade and you want to build a brand new house, the first thing you do is demolish the old house. So I think in many respects, what we're seeing now is the breaking down of the old system. The way we did things in the past are no longer relevant. And they will not take us where we want to go in terms of our global evolutionary process. And so we need to innovate, we need to come up with different ways of doing things. So the opportunities are there in abundance, particularly right now, and because people have time, right? So you're off work for a couple of weeks, you've downsized, or what have you, whatever it is. You've got more time now than you've had in decades. So with that understanding that new systems need to be created, new ways of doing things need to be designed, and couple that with the time that you've got on your hands, come up with something, sit down and begin with yourself. What do I need? How do I want to live my life? How do I want to design my day-to-day living? How do I want to treat myself? And then go outwards from there. Because if it works for you, I can guarantee you that there'll be people out there that will benefit from it as well. Because you're not the Lone Ranger. You're not on the planet by yourself. There are other people and millions of people going through similar things that you are and finding it challenging as well. So my advice to people is find ways to help yourself authentically, genuinely. And it doesn't mean taking advantage of other people. It means looking at what you need, what you genuinely really need, not what you thought you needed, and establish a system where you can have those things. And I can tell you right now, you'll find that there are very few of your core needs that are related to external situations in terms of, financial gain or recognition or, what have you. That very few of your core needs are found in the outside world. Almost all of them are internal. So once you start giving yourself what you need in a compassionate, genuine, and loving way, you will discover things about yourself that you wouldn't thought were possible. And from that point, your options will just dramatically increase. One of the reasons why people freak out and become extremely stressed in situations like this, because their scope of possibilities narrows so much that there's really only one or two ways out of this. All right. So, and that situation causes incredible pain and suffering, right? So the way to free yourself from that is to look at all the options that are available. And there are more than we could possibly imagine. So just start looking at the options, just start looking at the potential for improvement in that moment of struggle, in that moment of pain. Because I can tell you one thing that I've discovered personally, because I've been through hell and back. And it's the reason why I do what I do now, because I know how devastating it is to lose everything. And, whether it's business, money, property, health, pretty much sanity at one point. I know what it's like. But I also know that there is a way out. There's always a way. You just need to look for it. And you go back to that thing that I said, to invert the logic. Don't just focus, acknowledge what's broken, but don't just focus on it. Start looking at other things that are working. You still got your mind, you still got your abilities, you still have all the other aspects of things that make up who you are available to you. So use them, apply them. And you will, in almost an instant, once you do that, once you step into that different state of being, the options become apparent. It's almost like a blindfold has been taken off, and you begin to see some incredible opportunities. And you begin, this is the crazy thing, you begin to see the beauty in the pain, the perfection in the imperfection, as a lot of people say. And so what I tell people is the core purpose of pain isn't to create suffering. It's to create depth. it's through pain that we create depth. It's through pain we understand ourselves. It's through pain that the bullshit falls away. That is the quickest way to get to a deeper level of understanding, of knowing even further, knowing who you are. And from that place of knowing who you are, you can choose the things that are more aligned with that rather than the things that you thought were important.
I love that. It's through the pain. It's like there's an acceleration of that evolution. There's the rate at which we're growing. It's almost, growth is forced through times of pain. It's like there's the mirror that we're reflecting and that we're learning from. It gets bigger. We can see ourselves from all different angles, and I love that. It's about the depth that I think is what we're tapping into there. So
yeah. And just one more thing on that. The idea that you can think your way out of something purely from the same standpoint that you did before, particularly in this situation, is a falsehood. There needs to be a new way of thinking. There needs to be a new operating system that we install for ourselves. And so this is the opportunity that this gives us, is that it's the pain. The reason why I say pain is an opportunity for depth is that we're swimming in an ocean of lies, whether that's external lies that people tell us or the lies that we tell about ourselves, which are even more damaging. And so the pain is designed to break through those lies, because pain is real, right? When you hurt yourself, whether it's physically or emotionally, you know it's real, you can feel it. But a lie can seem real, but in reality it isn't. But pain is real. So once shit gets real, that's when the truth comes out. That's when the opportunity is made available. So that's why I say, I'm not telling people to go look for pain, but if it comes up, don't resist it. Understand that it's coming up for a purpose, and the purpose isn't to cause you harm; it's to free you from the lies.
Yeah, I love that. It's exploring the deeper truths, and that's what it's about. It's about the pursuit of truth that sometimes intellectually we can't access, or we have difficulty accessing because it's intellectual. You can't really see it, whereas the feeling, yeah, that's it. That's inescapable. Yeah, I love it. Well, Stephen, there's certainly some silver linings here. What would you say would be the biggest silver lining here, if there was one takeaway here, like in terms of an optimistic wisdom that's being created here through this whole situation? What would you say is the biggest silver lining?
Yeah, I think we touched on it before. The silver lining is an opportunity to create a whole new system. And the more you focus on that, the better you'll be, and the more of service you'll be to the people that you're trying to help. And the more value you add, as you know, as we all know, the more value you add, the greater the reward. So use this moment. Don't fight it. Don't try to resist it. Get out of the idea that it should be this or it could be that. Focus on what is. This is the situation. This is the reality. This is the truth. Focus on the opportunities that you have, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Because this can be an opportunity for people to radically change the way they live at a personal level, and be an inspiration to others as well. So look at things that you can do right now in this moment, rather than being on social media or watching television and just consuming all this negativity. Rather than doing that, focus on something positive, even if it's 5-10 minutes. Just do something to snap yourself out of that paradigm of death and destruction. uh, because the reality is, this is the silver lining. The reality is that 99% of us are going to be fine. Even if the ones, I think I saw a report that most people who actually contract this disease, recover with, no ongoing issues at all. Um, that's not to diminish the people who have lost their lives and the families who have lost people. But we need to look at the truth of it too. We need to be, a little bit logical about it, because we're operating purely from emotion right now, and emotionality is great, but you don't want to stay there. You need to kind of bring in a bit of logic, a bit of rational thinking, a bit of critical thinking that can pull you out of that emotional state. And so, yeah, doing things like, exercising and taking care of your health, breathing, meditating, whatever it is that you're into, yoga, and then recognizing that the aspect of you that's really in a fearful state right now is that part of you that you constructed for yourself. And if you recognize that you constructed it and you have the ability to construct that, then you know that you have the ability to reconstruct it, to create something else, to redesign who you believe yourself to be that is more in line with who you actually are.
That's powerful. I love it. It really is an opportunity for us to double down on getting clear on who we really are. This is a stripping away of the illusion of the false self. It's getting more aligned, and I think this is a great opportunity. I love the stories that are coming through here. There's lots of stories here around the environment is starting to get cleaned up. There are people that are taking time to actually, there are people loving spending time with family now. If you've got a nice family or a nice partner, that would be great. There's also a lot of people that are being confronted by being in proximity to their partner that might be triggering them right now. But that's a whole nother story. But I can see here there's an opportunity for people to to really take time for what's important, and actually even ask that question: what's the most important thing? And there's time for people to read, to work on themselves, to self-reflect, to get clear on what they want, what's their vision for their life. What are the things they've been putting off? There is a whole opportunity for a deeper level of self-reflection and self-inquiry and inner transformation. I think is going to come from this, from people at least having the time and space to allocate towards themselves and to choose what's important for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And breaking away from the idea that my self-worth is in someone else's hands, that who I am is dictated by someone else's opinion. And even when it comes to money, because a lot of people have this issue about money too, and that, the root of all evil and what have you. It's not the money. Money is just an amplifier. If you're an asshole, you're just a bigger asshole when you're rich. But if you're really genuinely nice, then you can use that for good, right? So it's just like alcohol, really. I mean, if someone drinks alcohol and they become angry and violent, well, that's just part of their true nature coming out. It's not the alcohol so much. But yeah, come to terms with the idea that what you do for yourself in a loving, genuine, authentic way will help other people. And through that process, you can be, rewarded monetarily. So that's not a bad thing. It's okay to help people and also make a living. Being good and virtuous isn't mutually, and having money aren't mutually exclusive. So it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I love that. And it's an opportunity to ask. This is the question I've been asking myself a lot of: is how can I be of service in times like these? How can I help more people? How can I add more value? How can I utilize my skill, my knowledge and experience to just be helpful? And I find that when I'm of service and when I'm contributing, everything gets taken care of. Joy, happiness, sense of accomplishment, sense of mission, purpose, as well as financially, that gets taken care of as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great opportunity too, and in my opinion, to reach out to people in your network or even people you don't even know, and just offer something, some little bit of insight, some technique or an idea that you have that helped you and that might help them, with not expecting anything in return. So, hey, I know that we're all going through a bad time. I found this thing that really helped me, whether it's a resource, whether it's a whatever it is, and just say, hey, check it out. See if it can, if it does something for you. If not, great. So it's a great opportunity to begin to genuinely network, not just, hey, what can you give me, and what can we, this transactional kind of relationships that we generally have, but just giving for the sake of giving. And I think the more we do that, the more people reach out to people like you who are genuinely there to help people, and just really with the spirit of collaboration, which is what is needed the most right now. If anything, if the current situation has taught us anything, is that there is a complete lack of collaborative spirit out there. um, if you look at the media, but if you are that type of person who can give without expecting anything in return, I would strongly suggest that you do that right now. Reach out to people, help them in whatever way you can. And if someone reaches out to you, don't just assume that they're just trying to get some money out of you or what have you. Engage with them. Just see what they're on about. I've emailed some people just last week and gave them people I didn't even know. I met them on LinkedIn. I don't know them personally, but they made a comment about something, and I thought, well, I have this thing that could help you. Here you go, check it out. And no expectation of even a reply from them. It was just a thing. Not that I'm a saint, but I'm just saying, I'm using my own example here. This is what works for me. It helps me cope with what's happening. It helps give me a sense of perspective, to help other people, to take the focus away from my own pains and sufferings and what have you, which, we're all going through something. It's no one's immune to it. Unless you're in, a tribe in South America or something that is completely remote and completely detached from, civilization. You're feeling the effects. So the more we can help each other in real, genuine terms, and in terms that aren't transactional, I think the better it will all be.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I certainly resonate with that. It's been one of the things that's helped me manage my own emotional state and manage my own spiritual, mental, intellectual needs, has been just reaching out and generally being helpful with no expectation of getting anything in return. And yeah, it's just it's a beautiful state to live in, to be able to nurture a relationship with no expectations. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
No,
It's
no
been a
problem. Well, that's part of the new system that I'm talking about.
mm,
And the more we can cultivate that, the better we'll all be.
oh, definitely. I think we're on the verge of a totally new system that's emerging. I think a much more virtuous, innovative, loving, and harmonious system is we're about to break through into that. I think this has been a catalyst that's going to help humanity awaken to a far better way of doing things. And I just see opportunities everywhere. I see so many opportunities, not just in technology, but in consciousness awakening technologies, in how we manage people, how we manage just the nature of how we live. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of great things that come out of this. And I think there's a short-term period of time where we've all got to be resilient. We've all got to get creative. But I think the long-term prospects they're looking good for what we can create as a humanity, as a collective. So I'm excited about that. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Well, this is the period of depth that we're creating. This is the pain that we're going to create the depth out of. So absolutely, I totally agree with you. And I think there's opportunity everywhere if you have your eyes open.
Yeah, and that's one of the greatest skills and greatest mindsets right now is innovation, is creativity, is keeping your mind clear, keeping your eyes up, and looking for the opportunity, because they're there, and that's where you're going to be able to leverage this opportunity. That's where you're going to be able to actually turn this into something quite powerful, I believe. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom. There's some absolute nuggets of gold there. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to drop in your contact details for people to get in touch with you after this, for people that should want to reach out to you. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution. I know people that are listening to this and watching this will be very, very grateful to hear some really positive, life-affirming wisdom coming through this whole situation. So thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. It was just a great opportunity for us to speak on something that's so important and impacting so many people's lives, to help just a few of them course correct at this particular juncture, is more than enough reward for me. So I'm very happy to be able to do that with you today.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Much appreciated. We'll speak again soon.
All right.
Thanks.